Welcome everybody to today's webinar. My name is Jared Britton. Essentially today we're going to be going a little bit deeper into PatSnap. Hopefully you can tell I've got a presentation available for us all today. I've tried a little bit harder than I usually do, so I've made a little presentation. That's me there, the bearded guy. You can see me. As you can see, I'm a technical specialist here at PatSnap. I've been working here for just over 2 years. I aid in a lot of different things like product strategy, tech scouting, FTO searching, competitive intelligence, business development, risk assessment. I do all that when it comes to helping my customers here at PatSnap. So a lot of you already know me from conducting these webinars, but I just wanted to kind of be a little bit more professional this time round and show you that actually, when it comes to this work, I'm not necessarily a new spring chicken. I have worked quite extensively in this area, and so hopefully, without me going on about it too long, you know that you're in good hands today. Essentially today, as you know, this is a session on FTO searching, and I would like to invite you all to kind of listen to a little bit about FTO. I've done a bit of a presentation beforehand, and then I think I'm going to go into a little bit more about how to actually use PatSnap itself to do FTO searches. So when it comes to FTO searching, I just really want to go over some of the basics, because there are a lot of PatSnap customers that I know are quite familiar with FTO, and it is kind of like an integral part of your job. Some people out there are starting to kind of just step into FTO searching, and I think sometimes it always helps to have a bit of a reminder. Whilst I was writing this presentation as well, it was nice to have a bit of a reminder for myself. It's kind of the exact basics of FTO searching. So we're going to start off with a bit of a presentation, and then we'll move through into PatSnap. Just for those of you that have just turned up, I want to remind you all that you do have a chat, you do have a Q&A function. So every now and again I'm going to stop and go through some of those questions, just so that you don't have to wait until the end to get a decent answer out of me. Unfortunately, I'm not going to do them as soon as they come up, so if you have any issues hearing sound or anything like that, I really apologize. I can't stop and help you halfway through. What I am going to do is kind of stop occasionally and make sure that I answer any questions that I can moving through today's session. So like I said, please do use the chat, do use the Q&A. Be more than happy to do my best to answer those. Likewise, a couple of you have already given me some feedback today on, registration for the webinars, getting reminded about the webinars. If you have any other kinds of feedback as well, that kind of stuff is perfect. I want to know how to make it easier for you guys to join these webinars. If you've got any ideas as to how we can improve these, any topics that you'd like us to go over, anything that you did like, anything you didn't like, it's always really nice to hear from you all, to find out how we're doing. I don't have the pleasure of being able to speak with you all one-on-one all the time. So if you do have any questions, any feedback or anything like that after today's session, then please feel free to shoot that off to webinar@patsnap.com, or indeed leave a message with whoever you've got a contact with at PatSnap, and it'd be fantastic to hear your input. Without further ado, let's go into what is FTO searching. I'm sure a lot of you already know, but I do want to cover the basics just in case anyway. So when it comes to FTO searching, again, real basics. The aim of an FTO search is to find out if there's anything that, if there's anyone that has protected and has active protection on the idea that we have. Thus, are we allowed to produce that invention? And when we say produce that invention, what I really mean is produce, import, sell that invention. Okay? So while today there are going to be a lot of things in common with a patentability search, that's not exactly what we're doing today. FTO is a little bit less involved in the actual, I guess, patentability of certain things, and I'll come to that in a little minute. The official WIPO, or World Intellectual Property Organization, definition of an FTO analysis is an FTO analysis invariably begins by searching patent literature for issued and pending patents and obtaining a legal opinion as to whether a product, process or service may be considered to infringe any patents owned by others. So like I said, today we're not really concerned so much with whether or not we're allowed to patent something. It's whether we are allowed to produce a product, a service or process that's going to infringe on somebody else. So FTO analysis searching does not necessarily include text scouting or idea generation either, but we will touch on idea generation a little bit today. FTO search is more about understanding if you're allowed to produce a specific invention that you have in mind. It's not necessarily so much about giving you ideas on what is free to create. Usually when you're doing an FTO search, it's I have this specific idea, I have this specific invention in mind. Are there any patents out there? Is there anything that's going to stop me from making and producing this item? Okay, so that's what we're talking about. Now, there are many different stages within an FTO process, within a kind of stage gate process. A lot of you, I'm sure, work within stage gates, but generally, you know, you've got an overall wave of development, okay? So at which point do you do an FTO search? It might be earlier or it might be later, but today I want to kind of prove to you that not necessarily either one is correct. So let's say you start early. If you conduct a search early in your innovation process, what you might find is that your invention's going to change a little bit, that by the time that you're done, and I'm sure a lot of you have kind of found this, by the time that you're done innovating this idea, find that the time that you're done kind of producing it, it's actually gone beyond what you originally searched for. So doing your patent search, do your FTO search too early, and what you actually produce is not going to match your original FTO search. On the other hand, if you do it late, you know, you might wait till the later stage of development, you find that you're going to be infringing. It might be too late to alter that invention so that it's no longer encroaching on a patent. So starting it early, starting this search early, then you run the risk of your idea changing so much. You start it late, then you also run the risk of it not being able to change at all. But, you know, it's going to be the lesser of two evils. Someone's asking if we can have a copy of the presentation. Yeah, I'll kind of alter it a little bit so it's a little bit more friendly, but I will send out some information. By the way, we also do have a help site now. That's something I've been working on pretty hard lately. I'll tell you what, I'll make it available on the help site. I'll make it so you can download it, so I will make this all available. My answer, or PatSnap's answer, or many other people's I suppose, is to say that this process should happen throughout. Don't worry, you're not interrupting. So this process should happen throughout. So with today's software, there's no real excuses. You know, back in the day, before the internet, before patent analytics platforms like PatSnap came along, you're going to do an FTO search once or twice because you're going to have to kind of, you know, write a letter, whatever that was, to the patent office, and they're going to have to, you know, help you, and you might have to go down to your local office. I don't know how it worked back in the day, to be honest. That was before my time. But essentially, it was a lot more difficult to do an FTO search because you'd actually have to physically go and do this stuff. Now, when you have things like PatSnap, you're sitting in a room, you've got a computer at you, there's no reason that you shouldn't be doing this once every couple of weeks, once a month. If we can make it nice and easy for you to do an FTO search, then you should be doing it throughout your process, making sure that you're not encountering the problems of this happening too early or indeed happening too late. So the real answer and the perfect scenario is yes, you're doing your FTO search throughout your analysis, throughout your invention and your stage gate process without kind of worrying that your invention is going to change too much or you don't have enough time left. If you can kind of spread it out, then you're not going to have so much of an issue with it, and you'll be able to kind of have it influence your development all the way through. So it's all good. Okay, you've done your FTO analysis. At some point, you might find a patent, and that's something that sometimes is going to make you shake, right? You've kind of invented your idea, you've thought of the perfect thing to solve your problem, and then damn, somebody's already got that in a patent. Is that the end of the world? Well, no, it's not always the end of the world. There are several reasons that you might still be able to produce this invention. Remember, again, we're not talking about patentability just yet. We're just talking about freedom to operate, which means producing, selling, importing an item. Okay? So patenting aside, you might still be able to make that item or that invention. There's several reasons that you might still be able to do it, even if there is a patent that matches exactly what you're talking about or matches close to what you're talking about. So first reason is a patent might not actually be protected globally, okay? If it is, patents are not necessarily the same in each jurisdiction, okay? So let's say, I don't know, for example, somebody out there has a machine that produces American flags, right? Us in the UK here, you know, probably not going to be so hot on producing American flags. We're more like Union Jack kind of people, right? So maybe somebody out there is going to have only protected that invention in the US. But then again, it's not necessarily the same in each jurisdiction as well. Maybe even if they have globally protected it, they might, they might have made it so that you don't have to really worry about it in your own country. It's a weird example. I don't know why I thought of that. But anyway, carrying on. Just because patents have been applied for in a variety of different countries doesn't mean they've been successfully protected, okay? So when you're looking at PatSnap, you must remember that there are differences between patent applications, obviously, and issued patents. Just because somebody's applied for a patent doesn't mean that means they've got any protection, right? So if I have an idea, I apply for that patent, there's always a good chance that I don't get that patent, that I don't protect it. And at that point, you've got an open invention. Anybody's allowed to create it. All right. So even if there's applications in a specific place, an application is only an application. It doesn't mean diddly, really. Okay. It just means that somebody else had the idea. You might still be able to make it. Likewise, if it's been granted protection, it might not actually even be maintained. So let's say that somebody has an idea and then, they don't really make too much money out of it. They don't have the right infrastructure. They didn't break the market that they were hoping to break. They didn't make any money from it, so they gave up on their patent. Patents are expensive things. You've got to maintain patents. You've got to keep spending money on them. And if you're not making any money from it, or you kind of moved on with your trade, with your innovation, you went to some other market or something, then there's a good chance that people are going to be giving up patents. Never giving up patents. As soon as they let a patent lapse, then there's like a 90% chance that you're going to be free to make that. I don't want to say 100% chance, because sometimes a lapsed patent can be kind of reinstated, but 9.5 times out of 10, you're good to make that. As soon as somebody's let it lapse, then that patent's public knowledge. Now it's open, and you can do whatever you want with it. And then patents issued in different places might have slight variations in their claims. Maybe they've got broader or narrower claims. So remember, just because you see an item in the US that seems to match exactly your invention doesn't mean that that's going to be exactly the same in every different country. It might have slight variances that means that you can kind of work around it. And that brings me to another point, something that I kind of thought of right after I did this little list here. There's one more point. If somebody's got a patent on something and you're thinking, damn, that that infringes, my idea infringes them, then you've got a public source of that patent right there. Tweak your idea. That doesn't mean you have to change your idea entirely. You just have to make it so that you're not infringing them on all of their claims. As soon as you change something in a minor way, you don't infringe all of their claims, then you're good to go. You can produce that item. You might even be able to patent that item. That kind of borderline is patentability. But the important thing is, they're detailing exactly what they've protected, and therefore you can really easily use that to your advantage to say, hey, well, I'm just going to tweak this one little point, and then I'm good to go. So again, when you're doing a freedom to operate, even if there is a patent out there, it doesn't kill you straight away. There are plenty of chances, there are plenty of reasons that you can still go ahead and produce that item without worrying. Finally, and again, something I probably just thought of this right now as well, and there's probably other things too, but just because there's a patent out there doesn't mean, again, your idea is thwarted entirely. People are pretty open to selling you their patents. Sometimes they're pretty open to letting you give them a little bit of money every month in order to create an item. Obviously, that's called licensing. So again, just because you find a patent that exactly matches your idea, don't move on. Don't kind of shrug and get on with your day and start inventing something else. Look into it a little bit more. Is that patent the same in every country? Is there a chance? Is there licensing? Are there been previous licensing deals on that patent? Is there any chance that you can kind of give them a call and say, hey, I can't see any issue with this, but would you mind maybe licensing me that patent for X amount of dollars a year? There's always a potential option, even if you do find a patent. And this kind of brings me again to patentability. So when it comes to patentability, it's not freedom to operate, okay? So it's an easy mistake to make. When we're saying freedom to operate, does operate include patenting? No, not necessarily. You don't have to have a patent on an invention to be able to make that invention. Remember, the basic kind of idea of a patent is that it stops somebody else from doing something that you have the idea for, okay? So if you've got an idea, then the first thing you do is an FTO search, just to make sure, okay, firstly, are we allowed to make it? then after you're sure you're allowed to make it, one thing you might still be able to do is even patent that idea to make sure that nobody else can make it. So just because you have freedom to operate in an area doesn't mean you can also patent there. I say, as we should all know, I don't think that we should necessarily all know. I should probably change that to, what would be good to remember. To patent an invention, it has to be entirely novel. So remember, if you've seen anybody else out there with the same idea as you, not allowed to patent it. It's got to be entirely novel. And when I say if you've seen anybody else out there with the same idea as you, I don't necessarily mean they just have to have a patent in there. It could literally be anything. No one can have publicly shared that idea before, anywhere, ever. This means if you're looking at patentability, you should recognize that aside from patents, any public-facing information can hinder your plans to patent a particular item. So there have been loads and loads and loads of cases, I'm sure there's tons and tons of them every day, where just because somebody doesn't have a patent on something doesn't mean that you're allowed to make that idea, that you can patent that idea. If you can't prove that you're the first one to have that idea, then you can't have a patent on it anywhere in the world. So you might look at loads of different places: websites, scientific journals, industry publications, general media, new media, anywhere. So essentially, you could be thwarted. Your idea to get a patent can be thwarted from absolutely anything. I've got a really interesting example. We had a visit here in London in our PatSnap offices from a chap called Chris Harrison. He worked for the UK IPO. And he told us about a really interesting patent. I did some work on it today, and I managed to find it. Here's the UK patent application. Okay, so it's all well and good. You can go and look it up if you want to. I've left the details fairly clear on here. But there's a really interesting little kind of aspect of this. This comes under documents cited, okay? And I've made it pretty big. I'm not sure, I didn't notice how many people are on the phone here from the UK. For those of you that are from the UK, you will remember a comic book called The Beano. It's where we have our Dennis the Menace. Any Americans on the phone today, we've got a Dennis the Menace and you've got a Dennis the Menace. Ours has got black spiky hair, yours has got a blonde comb over, a bit like Trump. Our Dennis the Menace comes from the Beano, I believe. Hopefully I'm not getting that wrong. Sorry, a little bit. I'm of the younger generation. I was a little bit after comic books and that kind of thing. But the Beano, they had an idea for a dog flap that responded to the dog kind of doing something on the dog flap, which allowed the dog flap to open. Okay. Now, when this inventor or this assignee submitted this patent, we had or in the UK office there was a chap who was oddly familiar with the comic book of the Beano, and just happened to remember somehow that there is in fact a mention of this exact kind of dog flap in this comic book. Now, the people writing this comic book were writing it because it was funny for children. They weren't trying to legitimately patent or protect ideas. They just had a funny idea for Dennis the Menace's dog Gnasher to be able to come in through the dog flap, and they'd kind of made a note of that, and they'd jokingly described how this dog flap would work in the door. That potentially, and it didn't actually happen in this case, but it was potentially detailed enough to thwart these guys' ability to patent the idea, because it was almost provable. And I say almost because they did get this patent in the end. They did get it granted because it was vaguely, very, very slightly different. But it would have been enough to stop these guys from getting their patent, because this idea was public enough. So when it comes to patentability, a patentability search is a lot more difficult because it doesn't just include patents. It includes literally everything, including children's magazines from 20 years prior to that. So I thought that was a really interesting example of when, on what is a nice official kind of legal document here, that's something you should kind of really be watching out for. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to kind of go through in terms of freedom to operate on this. I want to get on to PatSnap now, but I believe there have been a couple of questions whilst I've been kind of chatting away about British comic books and things. So I'm just going to pause my screen and see if there's been any questions in the meantime, and then we'll go ahead and we'll kind of go through a bit of a case study to see, okay, now that we've understood what an FTO search actually is, how do we actually do that within PatSnap? So I'm just going to find out and make sure that we're all good for that. Let's go and have a look at some questions. Okay. Okay, somebody's chanting USA, USA. That's very good. Okay, so this means, for example, somebody publishes a white paper on the same idea, you can't patent. Correct. If it's public, you can't have that patent. Okay, so if there's any way, to put it simply, if there's any way that somebody could prove that you weren't the first person to have a specific idea, and they can prove that the idea is the same as your idea, you can't patent it because you have not proven that you were the first person to have that idea. And follow-up question was, what's to stop people from just publishing millions of ideas on a blog to prevent patenting? There isn't. There is nothing to stop people from doing that. Companies actually do this. I think it's called, I've forgotten. It's, what's the word? Something like aggressive publication or something. I know I should know this. I should know this. You're testing me now. But essentially, yes. Sometimes a company, if they've potentially maybe got no idea or no interest in patenting an idea, but they know that their competitor is about to patent an idea, then they can just aggressively publish something. I think it's like aggressive publication. They can just aggressively publish something, and that will stop the other company from doing it. So long as they can get that idea out first and prove to the public world, to the public space, that they were the first ones to have an idea, then yeah, you can't have that idea. It's not yours. You weren't the first person to think of it. Defensive publication. Thank you very much. I knew I was there. It wasn't aggressive, was it? It was defensive publication. Thank you. And then somebody says, why would you want something patented over just publishing an idea in a comic book? Well, if you patent an idea, essentially, if you patent an idea, that stops anybody else from doing it. If you just write your idea down in a comic book, then that's all well and good. It's in the public space, and you can make that, but you can't stop anybody else from doing it. My advantage in having a patent is that it's a reward for my innovation. If I spend millions and millions of pounds or dollars or wherever you're from, inventing, let's say, the cure for cancer in my lab, then I should have a reward for my innovation. If I just invent that thing and I can't protect that idea, there's nothing to stop every other company in the world coming and reverse engineering my idea and kind of getting out there and making that drug for cheaper than I can make it, with better resources, better infrastructure than I could ever hope to have. And then I've got no reward for innovation, so I've got no incentive to do it in the first place. So publishing can protect the idea from patenting, but patenting allows you to exclusively use it. Correct. And they are, yes, okay, they're fairly basic questions, but they're fair questions. They're very good questions. And yes, wonderful. So let's begin. Let's go ahead and do a patent search. So I am now going to go to PatSnap. Now, hopefully we've all got the basics of PatSnap. If you haven't seen PatSnap before, then I would definitely recommend you come along to one of our basics webinars, one of our advanced webinars. There's plenty of different resources for you to use PatSnap in the basic form. I'm not going to be using PatSnap very slowly today, okay? So I'm not going to go into the absolute basics. I do have a couple of ideas that I want to go into. I've been struggling over what to use as an example. Those of you that have been to my webinars in the past, you're probably bored of me searching for prosthetic hips. You're probably bored of me searching for RFID washing machines. So something that I'm quite curious about when it comes to payday, I think I'm going to be buying myself a drone. I would really like to buy a drone. I'm a bit of an amateur photographer, a bit of an amateur video maker, and I would love to be able to do some kind of video and photography using a drone. So that's my inspiration for today. I'm going to now step into and assume the role of somebody who is a drone company, okay? Now, what I'm not interested in, by the way, are military drones, okay? So I'm not going to be dropping bombs. I'm not going to be, shooting rockets or anything from my potential invention idea. I'm thinking today about a consumer-level drone, one of those kind of quadricopter-style things with a camera on it, so that I can produce lovely videos of me just walking down the road in London, because that's about as interesting as my life gets. So, first things first, we've got to construct a basic search. When it comes to freedom to operate, the best thing to do is stay nice and broad. We want to account for as many different kinds of ways that somebody has described this technology as possible. Now, again, for those of you that know me, or for those of you that have heard me work before, you'll know that I'm a massive proponent of IPCs. excuse me, I really, really like IPCs. But today, I'm going to start off with the idea of naivety, okay? So, personally, I've done this search once before. I did it in really quick prep for today's session, but I'm still quite a noob when it comes to searching for drones and things. So what I'm going to do is just start off with some keywords, and we'll kind of learn as we go. We'll work out the IPCs, and we'll kind of start from the start and see where we get. By the way, this is not all entirely practiced. I am somewhat winging it today. This is, I guess, more of a realistic scenario. I haven't kind of pre-prepared too much. I know what I'm searching for. I know that it comes up with at least some results, but other than that, I'm going into this fairly blind, which is what's going to happen when you're doing FTO searches as well. I thought that would be fair. I could have prepared every step of the way, but hopefully, you know, I'm going to let the patent gods guide me, and hopefully we'll kind of come up with a decent search. So, first thing I've got is I need to come out with some decent keywords. So I'm going to start with UAV. Okay, so UAV. And a UAV stands for unmanned aerial excuse me, unmanned aerial vehicle. Okay. Or quadricopter. By the way, if any of you have any kind of suggestions or ideas, I'm more than open to it. I might be alright at searching. It's quadcopter, my bad. This is why I should have done a bit more practice. If any of you have any kind of tips for me, if you've got any ideas, if you've got any things that you would do differently, then let me know. We can make this a bit more of a sharing session today, because once again, something I want to kind of point out here is that there's no perfect and there's no right or wrong. Well, there's probably a couple of wrong ways to do it, but no, there's no right way to do it. Everybody's going to do a search slightly differently. So I want to, yeah, just kind of allow that. Okay, thank you, person who suggested that. Drone or radio controlled, or I've also got remotely piloted. And what I'm also going to do at the end here is recognize that yes, a bunch of the stuff going to come back is going to be military stuff. So just to start off with, I'm going to go not military, because I'm not interested in that kind of drone. So just starting off today, I have got my keyword search. You'll notice that I have not used any IPCs or anything yet. I'm just starting off the keyword search because nobody, unless you worked in an area for a long time, when you first start searching, you don't know the IPCs off by heart. I certainly don't know all of them off by heart. So we just need to start off with a decent keyword search. This will do for the moment. We'll see what we get back. Okay, so roughly 17,000 different groups of patents. Alrighty. So, first things first, what I already recognize is that my settings right now, I've narrowed it down to info.doc family reps, okay, which means essentially that I'm only looking at one patent per entire family. Now, if you think about it, when it comes to a freedom to operate search, this might be right, it might be wrong. What I'm actually going to do is change settings a little bit. I've totally forgotten about my settings. I need to change my settings because I'm not necessarily searching to operate in every single country. I am, for the benefit of the majority today, going to search as though I am from the US, or that I am based in the... Okay, I'm going to reword that. I'm going to search as though I am based in the US. I'm an Englishman in New York, okay? So I am not worrying too much about other countries. That said, what I will do is I will disable my search for everywhere except for the US. Let's keep Europe just in case. Because remember, this is a freedom to operate search. I don't care if stuff's patented in China. I'm not interested in operating in China. I want to produce and sell my invention in this case, the US and Europe. So I am using my button up here at the top corner just to say, hey, I'm only interested in really producing, selling, and maintaining my item in Europe and the United States. So that will be good for the moment. That brings me down from quite a lot to not too much. So 8.4 thousand groups. Okay. So we're all good so far. Next up, what else is interesting? Well, I know that there's going to be a lot of different kinds of patents in here. how do I make sure that I'm in the right kind of market? Well, the quickest way to understand that I'm kind of looking in the right area for my market, because things like quadricopter or drone, drone is a very generic word in a way. UAV is an acronym that might be in plenty of different places. So how do I make sure that I'm in the right tech space? Well, just above my publication number column, I've got this little area here, which is my analyze patterns area. So the first thing I'm going to really look at is my IPC distribution. I can already see here there's a bunch of stuff here that I say don't care about, makes me sound a bit teenagery, stuff that I'm not particularly concerned with, okay? So I've got A61 here. Out of 8.4 thousand different groups of patents, I've got 276 here that are medical based. I've got things here that are agriculture. So you get kind of remotely piloted combine harvesters, okay? So there's a very famous band from my town that sing about combine harvesters. I wonder if any of you know that. That's where I'm from. I'm from the farmer place in the UK. Anyway, there's a bunch of stuff here that's medical, that's agricultural, stuff here that's sports, games and amusements, and that might actually be kind of towards what I'm looking for. B64 is aircraft, aviation, cosmonautics. That sounds pretty correct. So these IPCs are giving me a decent idea as to how broad is my search, how much do I have to narrow down, what do I have to narrow down to. And by the way, I'm looking at the top companies as well. We're seeing people like Boeing, Raytheon, Honeywell, US Navy, Lockheed Martin, Thales. They are fairly military, a lot of those companies. Again, today I am after the more consumer level kind of stuff. That's not to say, however, and I've got to check myself, that's not to say that I'm going to be free and clear. Just because it's military doesn't mean that I'm allowed to make it. If I don't put a gun on it, or if I don't put a rocket on it or something, that doesn't mean I'm cool to make it. There's nothing to stop the military from patenting something that stops something in the consumer market. Okay, especially if it's something that is almost borderline like a drone. So just because I'm getting people like Lockheed Martin, like the US Navy here, that doesn't mean that I need to exclude those companies, because they might still have patented stuff that stops me from operating in the consumer space. So you mustn't really kind of think, oh yeah, because it's the United States military, I don't have to worry about that. You still have to worry about that. You can still infringe their patents, and they're still going to come after you. And the U.S. military is not somebody I want to infringe the patents of. I'm sure they'll handle everything very gracefully, but still. So how do I narrow down? Well, I'm gonna use something that's a little bit more, I guess, deft, a little bit more dexterous than this IPC chart. I'm going to use my IPCs on the left-hand side instead. So again, so far, by the way, guys, we're still concentrating on getting to the right data set. I'm still not confident that I've got necessarily the right data set. Once we're in the right data set, we'll then think about analyzing it. But for the moment, we need to get to there first. So the top classifications, so the most popular classifications, are things like B64C39/02, which are airplanes, helicopters, air cushion vehicles, aircraft not otherwise provided for, characterized by special use. That sounds pretty correct to me, so I'm going to click on that. Next one down, G05D1. What is that? That is control of position, course, altitude of land, water, air, or space vehicles, e.g. automatic pilots, radio navigation systems, or analogous systems using other waves. Again, sounds pretty spot on to me. Next one, what is that? Using wireless transmission, also pretty good. G06K9, what's that? Methods or arrangements for reading or recognizing printed or written characters or recognizing patterns. Not too worried about that. Maybe on drones that are thinking like, the latest ones out here are tracking faces and stuff, so that, whilst you're doing backflips on your BMX or whatever, it knows to follow you in the air. That might be towards that area, but I'm not going to get too complex today. Closed circuit television systems, toy vehicles with self-drive, that might be it, but I'm thinking maybe that's not. I don't know if we extend into toy vehicles, do we? I am thinking about kind of consumer amusements. I'm going to add it in as an option. So we've narrowed it down to one of these four classifications. It's got to be either this or this or this or this. We can hit refine now. Where does that get us? From 8.4 thousand down to about 1,000. That's pretty good still. And now I know that we're getting into the right area because the top organizations that we've got coming back, number 2 is Parrot. They're one of the top producers of consumer drones and quadricopters, that kind of thing as well. DJI, they're also one of the top producers, so I definitely know that I'm in the right area now. Now that I've got this data set, and I'm pretty confident that I've got the right kind of patents, where do I go from here? How can I understand if out of these 1,000 patents I'm free to operate, I'm free to do my thing? Well, first area, classic PatSnap style, I am going to go to a landscape. Actually, in best practice, I'm first going to save my search. That's a good search. Drones with a Z. Landscape. Click on landscape. Again, right now, I'm happy to landscape because I've got 1,046. Now, landscaping right now is capped to 1,000, but, you know, for the sake of argument, I'm pretty good to go, to be honest, for 1,000. And again, nice little interesting point here. We have the option now in a landscape to exclude expired patents. Think to yourself, in an FTO search, do I care about expired patents? No, because they are not protected. Okay, so just because a patent is around doesn't mean that it's a bother. You know, if that patent ran out 5 years ago, I don't care. I'm cool to produce it, so I'm going to exclude expired patents, which will probably take us a little bit below 1,046. So we'll see how we go. So what it's doing now, remember everybody, for those of you that aren't massively familiar with the landscape, it's looking at the similarity of these documents. It's comparing them based on keywords, it's comparing them based on IPCs, and it's plotting them based on similarity. And what we're going to happen is we'll end up with a landscape that looks like this. I always cross my fingers. I never know how the landscape's going to turn out. This is a pretty good one, I think. Okay, so now we've got a landscape. Take a breath, Jared. Alright, we're good. We're still good. What's happening? We've got the most popular hill here, aerial vehicle, unmanned system, unmanned vehicle, drone. Okay, that's pretty generic kind of stuff. What I need to do first off is change my labels because they are pretty generic. So how do I change labels? Well, I could easily just click on them and edit them manually, but that's not fun, that's not useful. I'm going to go to my edit, and I can, on my label model, I'm going to click on normal labels and enter in some words which I have decided are not interesting. I know that we are searching within the drone space. We are definitely within the unmanned vehicle space. Okay, so when it's telling me about unmanned vehicle, I don't care. I know that it's about unmanned vehicles. Every pattern here is about unmanned vehicles, so it's not useful. It's labeling that for me. So I'm going to now reduce out these things: unmanned vehicle, anything else that is worth getting rid of, unmanned aerial vehicle. Just separating every key term with a comma. Do I want to get rid of anything else? Probably drone. That's pretty obvious as well. So that'll do for the moment, those 3 terms: unmanned vehicle, unmanned aerial vehicle, and drone. Click filter, and it's going to get rid of those words and replace them with the next most interesting words for me. Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. Because remember, in a lot of these we haven't specified that it has to be flying. But there's some stuff here which is super interesting, like vertical takeoff. Wow. How else can we understand if we've got free to operate? Now that we've got these patents on here, let's show all of them. So I'm going to click on show all and plot these on here with each of the dots. Okay. Now we're getting down to the real bones of this. First off, what are the kind of areas that we're kind of free to operate in? Well, it's difficult. Like I said, today we're not really talking about idea generation. You've got a specific idea and you need to know if you're free to go. Okay, so first things first, you're going to look at some of these labels and you think, okay, yeah, my patent is primarily concerned with vertical takeoff of unmanned drones. Then you're going to look in the area that's mostly concerned with vertical takeoff. Again, it's not a perfect example because I'm not a drone maker and I don't have a very specific idea for a drone or for a quadricopter. So I recognize it's not the perfect example today, but very difficult to come up with such an example. What I can do is look at the areas, for example, that I know are very free and learn what's in those areas. So for example, this patent here, it's very isolated, it's very different from a lot of other patents. So what is that idea? Click on it, Trailer for autonomous vehicle. That's very interesting, came out very, very recently. A trailer for an autonomous vehicle controlled by a command and vehicle interface. Okay, not what I'm interested in, because that doesn't seem like it's flying. What else have we got? Damping means for flying drone apparatus. That's more like it. Okay. Okay, so when it comes to freedom to operate, I'm going to get down to the main stuff here because we haven't got an awful lot of time left. I've just looked at the time and I've been prattling on for a while now. So first things first, what's the first place I would usually go? I would go to the text paper tool. If we've done an analysis based on similarity and you want to know if your idea is too similar to other ideas, then the best thing you can do is put your idea in here and work out if it's similar to anything else. The best tool for that is your paper match tool. So I'm going to click on add text paper. I'm going to call it my drone. And then you put in the text of your patent. I mean, not necessarily of your patent, sorry, of your invention. If you're inventing something, you probably are going to have a write-up. If you don't have a write-up, then write one. Usually you've got some kind of written description of what your idea is, right? You're going to plug that description in here, and it's going to compare it against the text used in other things. If you're using certain words a lot more because they're more pertinent to your patent, then, oh, sorry, I keep saying to your patent, but to your idea, then we will match that with other documents on here that kind of match it. So unfortunately, I am not genuinely doing something like this, but I am going to grab a couple of different patents here and just grab them and copy and paste the abstracts in. Again, usually this is not the ideal scenario for you to actually do this, but what I'm going to do is just kind of grab some of these different patents. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Submit. Okay, so now we are analyzing this document in much the same way that we analyze everything else, and somewhere on this landscape we have put a lovely little green triangle to say where your idea fits most with other patents. And in this case it is unfortunately smack bang on the most kind of dense hill on the landscape. So if this was a potential idea for you, then you know that out of those 1,000 patents, this is where you want to start. Those kind of 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 patents that are clustered in this area verbally are the most similar to your patents. So if you're going to start reading one of those 1,000 documents, then I would start with those 8 or so patents that are there. How do you extract that out of the landscape? Go to your edit tool on here, click on show grids, and on here you can just select this area here. 101 patents out of 1,046. That's pretty good. You can either view those individually, you can export them, you can add them to a list if you want to. Okay, so you can find an interesting list, or you can create a list and export those patents out of there and read those. Remember, this is based on similarity of patents. So that's one way of doing things. How else can we understand kind of freedom to operate as well? I mean, landscape is all good. By the way, if you want to locate something pretty easily on the landscape, click your magnifying glass button and we can search. For example, if I was more interested in, let's say, night vision. I don't know if it's going to pop up. I'm going out on a limb here. 22 patents, fantastic. So there are 22 patents on this landscape that have something to do with night vision. If I notice that that is clustered in a certain area, then those are the patents that I might want to check out. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So those are the kind of a few of the areas. Again, I'm not going to stay on the landscape now because I'm kind of done with it. I've done the things that I need to do. I'm quite happy with what I've done here. So goodbye landscape. Now what else can I do? I think what I'm going to do here now is go to an insights module. So again, right now, oh sorry, I keep saying again, it's my filler word. I'm going to go to insights. Insights, I am very aware that not everybody has. If you don't have insights and it looks like the kind of thing you do want to have, let me know and we'll make it happen, okay? But insights is a fantastic way of analyzing your patents, of working out what you need to do about working out certain things. So I've got my technology here, got my technology dashboard. I'm going to create my dashboard. And there's going to be some really interesting stuff on here. Now, when it comes to freedom to operate, There is an absolute gold mine on here. Hopefully I've just kind of given it away by accidentally mousing over it. Hopefully you can tell which area I'm going to go to. Renewal and abandonment. There we go. This is the gold mine. These are ideas that have been recently or kind of most recently abandoned. These are the ideas that have been most recently renewed. So there's one specific button on here that I'm the most interested in. These patents were worth, or these patents over here, by the way, these little orange ones are abandoned patents that were abandoned last year. Okay, so these are all ideas that are free to go, right? So if you are interested in ideas that you are now good to go, good to produce, then here's the ideas that people, I mean, to be honest, one man's trash is another man's gold mine, or some kind of thing like that. But essentially here we have now the patents that other people weren't interested in maintaining, but they were interested in patenting in the first place, and they've they've abandoned them. Okay, so these are all free game ideas. You can go ahead and produce these. They're all good to go. So this is kind of like charity shop kind of stuff. Again, I'm saying, you know, not one man's trash or it's charity shop. I don't mean to be so kind of almost derogatory about these patents. What I really mean is they weren't worth the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars that one needs to maintain those ideas. Sometimes your idea is going to be really, really valuable to someone else. If one of these things allows you, or if one of these patents allows you to produce a document or a product that is going to make you millions, then that's good. Just because somebody else didn't think it was worth it doesn't mean that you shouldn't think it's worth it. And again, these are all ideas that are free game now. Likewise, you know, look at the renewals as well. These are what people still think are good to go. If you see an idea in here and think, oh yeah, they're small unmanned aircraft, then that's a perfect place to look. Likewise, hopefully, oh no, damn, licensing. What I was going to show you is licensing here. If there is licensing in the area, then that means that you could potentially license it as well. Again, you know, like I said, this demo, I didn't check every wing and every facet of it. When it comes to licensing in the US, nobody's really licensing drone stuff right now, or at least not publicly. That doesn't mean to say that it's not available though. So do have a look at your licensing data. If there's public licensing, then we can tell you about it. If there's no public licensing, we obviously can't tell you about it, but that doesn't mean to say that it's not happening. So remember, just because people have patents on your idea doesn't mean that they're not necessarily willing to allow you to produce that idea. Wonderful. Where else can we go? Something like this as well, patent valuation. This is a really nice area. On this patent valuation, if we go and look at the top 50 out of this list, you're going to find the patents on here which are about to expire, which is wonderful. So you can see here, for example, this mobile remote control video gaming system from Intel is at 16 years, okay? So in less than 4 years, you're going to be good to make that. So this is kind of like, again, you know, what is about to become free game. So the longer the green bar here, essentially that means the closer that you are to being able to make that. So it's not exactly freedom to operate, but it's kind of showing you, hey, this is the kind of stuff that's about to be good to go. So I really like that area as well. It's kind of like a countdown on, you know, what you're going to be allowed to do soon. So those are some really, really kind of interesting kind of ways of doing this work. Now, that's kind of everything that I have on my list exactly. I didn't go through every kind of facet of how to do, you know, every single part of an FCO search. Okay, so if you are interested in doing a little bit more on top of this, then let me know. I can be a bit more detailed in certain areas if you want to. If any of you have any questions, then please go ahead and ask questions. I'm just going to pause my screen. I've got a couple of things in here. Do you think it's risky to not military? They could have abandoned because they infringed. Okay, yeah, no, really good point. So somebody on the chat has made the point that I've knotted military out of my query. Let me just go back and kind of tell you what I'm talking about. I got rid of military. So the point that this person is making is, I have gotten rid of every patent from my search that has contained the word military. right? What if somebody has produced an idea that is that's just mentioning, like, maybe they've got a consumer drone, but they have just mentioned, oh, this potentially has military applications, and they've left it at that. That's one option. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It might have been a mistake of me to write not military, because maybe somebody's mentioned military and it's still not military technology. What I should have done, really, and maybe if you would agree with me, let me know via the chat if you would agree with my adjustment here, is I should probably not out something that is instead an IPC that's to do with weaponry or something, right? So if I hit refine now and I get rid of that, so there's 400 or so patents difference when I get rid of the military thing, right? So if I then go to my IPCs, and I could spend a bit more time doing some work on this, but I've got F42 there, okay? So I could say not IPC F42, which means that I'm not interested there in the patents that are to do with ammunition and blasting, okay? 41, F41 weapons. So if I click on that area, just out of curiosity, 49 different groups here. There are a bunch of different patents here that, stuff that's crazy. Airborne laser weapon system. We are truly in the future right now. But there are patents here that are more weaponry based, that maybe are a little bit more military, not so much in the area that I'm interested in. And I should have, instead of saying not military, I should have kind of gotten rid of them via that way instead. So by the way, to do that, I've just narrowed down. I clicked on that IPC class F41, and as you can see, it's adjusted my search just to say and IPC class this. So all I have to do is say not. I'm just going to replace the and with a not, and hit refine once more. And I know then that I've increased the amount of patents that I'm looking at, but I know that there's not stuff in here to do with weaponry or with ammunition. So I'm not sure, again, unnamed person, if you would agree that was probably a better way of doing things. Wonderful, wonderful. You're one step ahead of me. Okay, so that's everything. I think I've got to all the questions. I think I've got to all the Q&As. I think we're all good to go. Well, that sounds like everything, everybody. So if you do have any further questions or anything like that, please do shout something over to webinar@patsnap.com. You should be able to see my email address in the top right-hand corner, webinar@patsnap.com. You can also get me at jbritton@patsnap.com as well, if you have my email address. I would love some feedback from you. If you could tell me that, because I've made some adjustments to my style of webinar. If you liked this, then do let me know. If there's aspects of this that you think maybe could have been better, let me know how, and I'd be more than happy to oblige. I have taken on your feedback with, we need to make the registration for these events easier. By the way, something that I will love to show you is, if you mouse over your webinar@patsnap.com or whatever your email address is up here, go to your help center. It's a little bit slow today in the UK. The screen could have been bigger. Okay, I will work on that. I am sitting next to a 42-inch TV, but it's a little bit big for me at my side. I'll see what I can do in terms of zooming in next time. But by the way, we do have this help site here, so patsnap.zendesk.com/HC. We've got a big long list of our webinars here, so you can go and sign up for a webinar here. I will look into making out some kind of reminder emails for you all. We'll also kind of bug you a little bit more about them maybe. So that is taken note, and we'll see if we can make them easier to register. We do use WebEx, so we are confined a little bit by WebEx registration and whatever WebEx use. I don't want to blame the tools though. I'll see if there's anything that I can do to make things a little bit easier. So thank you very, very much for that feedback. Likewise, if you have any more feedback, then please, please, please let me know. It has been an absolute pleasure doing this today. Believe it or not, I've actually had quite a lot of fun doing this one. This is pretty good. So yeah, that's been great. Let me see. There's somebody else with something to say in the chat. Okay. Christina, if you use the same description twice, is it possible for the same idea description label to fall in a different place if you use the same description twice? Yes, if you do it in different landscapes. but if you are doing the same idea in the same landscape, it should appear in the same space. That's the way that it should work. If you are not seeing that, then let me know. And if the FTO introduction was a bit lengthy, noted, I will try to concisify it. Thanks very much, though. I will sign off for today. Somebody else is going to want this this conference room from me, so I will thank you all very much for coming along today. Again, any of you want any questions answered or anything like that, please shoot off an email to me. I'd be happy to reply via email. So once again, thank you very much, everybody, for coming along today, and I will speak with you all again very, very soon. Do check out the rest of our webinars. It'd be great to have you back. Until next time, everybody, thank you very much, and goodbye.